Exodus. Exodus chapter 1 verse 6 says, "Now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died, but the Israelites were fruitful and multiplied greatly, and became exceedingly numerous, so that the land was filled with them." A new king, who did not know Joseph or his family, worried that the Israelites would become mighty and side with an enemy if a war broke out. So he put slave masters over them and oppressed them with forced labor. But the Israelites continued to multiply. Then Pharaoh commanded the midwives to throw every Israelite baby boy that was born into the river. A man of the tribe of Levi and his wife had a son. She hid him for 3 months, but when she could hide him no longer, she placed him in a basket made of reeds and placed him in the Nile River. Pharaoh's daughter found him and named him Moses. He became her son. When Moses was grown, he killed an Egyptian for mistreating a Hebrew slave. When Pharaoh heard, he tried to kill Moses, so Moses fled to the desert. He came to Midian, where he married and lived for 40 years tending sheep. During that time, the king in Egypt died, and the Israelites were groaning in their slavery and cried out to God. And God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. One day Moses, as he was tending his sheep, came to Horeb, the mountain of God, and saw a bush there on fire. Yet the bush didn't burn up. God called to Moses, "Moses, Moses." And Moses responded, "Here I am." God said, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for where you are standing is holy ground. I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, "I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. So now I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people and the Israelites out of Egypt." But Moses said, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God said, "I will be with you." And Moses said, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you.' And they ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.' This is my name forever, the name by which I am to be remembered from generation to generation." The sound of the Hebrew letters that spell "I am" have been pronounced Yahweh, which also has been called Jehovah. I think it's wonderful that his name is I Am, that he is ever present, and that his son's name is Emmanuel, which means God with us. This is not a God who is aloof, unaware, or distant. Moses had one more argument for God and said that he wasn't an eloquent speaker. God's response was, "Who gave man his mouth? Who makes him deaf and mute? Who gives him sight or makes him blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say." So Moses went, complaining, and on his way met his brother Aaron, whom God had called to go out to meet Moses in the desert. Aaron was to speak for Moses. Moses and Aaron brought together the elders of the tribes of Israel, and when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. The Lord is always concerned about his people. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, 'Let my people go, so that they may hold a festival for me in the desert.' But Pharaoh said, 'I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go.' He also told the slave drivers to make the Israelites maintain their daily quota of bricks, even though they now would have to gather their own straw for making them. The Israelites complained to Moses and Aaron, and Moses complained to God. God repeated his promise to them, "I will free you from being slaves. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. I am the Lord." He told Moses that he would harden Pharaoh's heart, and that even though God would perform miraculous signs, Pharaoh would not let the people go. And just as God said, even after the 9 plagues recorded in Exodus chapters 7 through 10, Pharaoh did not let God's people go. But then the 10th and last plague came. Moses told Pharaoh what God had said. "About midnight I will go throughout Egypt, and every firstborn son in Egypt will die, from the firstborn son of Pharaoh who sits on the throne to the slave girl, and the firstborn of the cattle as well. There will be a loud wailing throughout Egypt, but among the Israelites not a dog will bark at any man or animal. Then you will know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel." Then the Lord told Moses and Aaron, "From now on, every year at this time, for every generation to come, take a lamb for each family and slaughter it at twilight. Take some of the blood and put it on the sides and top of the doorframes of their houses. That same night, eat the meat roasted over the fire, along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. Eat it with your coat and sandals on and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. On that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn, and will bring judgment on the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you." The Israelites did just as the Lord commanded. At midnight, the Lord struck down the firstborn of Egypt. There was not a house without someone dead. Pharaoh's son died, and Pharaoh came to Moses and Aaron and commanded them to take their flocks and herds and go. So the Israelites left, 600,000 men, plus women and children. The Israelites had lived in Egypt 430 years. At the end of 430 years, to the very day, they left Egypt. God led the people around the long way to avoid war with the Philistines. Then Pharaoh changed his mind about letting them go. He took out his army and pursued them. He came upon them with their backs to the Red Sea. The people cried out to Moses, who told them to stand firm and see the deliverance the Lord would bring today. God told him to raise his staff over the sea. Moses did, and the sea parted, leaving dry ground for the Israelites to cross on all night, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. At daybreak, the Egyptians followed them into the sea, and the water flowed back on them, and none survived. The Israelites traveled 3 days without water, and cried out to Moses. Twice God provided water for them. Then they wanted food. God provided manna, which was like sweet bread from heaven, that came with the dew each morning and could be collected each day. After 3 months they came to Mount Sinai, and they made their camp. Moses went up on the mountain. The Lord descended on Mount Sinai in a cloud with thunder and lightning, and gave Moses the 10 Commandments. They are recorded in Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 17. The first 4 commandments refer to God's relationship with people. Number 1, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. Number 2, you shall not make for yourselves an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of the fathers to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing love to thousands who love me and keep my commandments. Number 3, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for God will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your manservant or maidservant, nor your animals, nor the alien within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. The last 6 commandments refer to people's relationships with each other. Number 5, honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Number 6, you shall not murder. Number 7, you shall not commit adultery. Number 8, you shall not steal. Number 9, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Number 10, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant, or maidservant, or ox, or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. When the people saw the thunder and lightning, and heard the trumpet, and saw the mountain smoke, they trembled with fear, and told Moses to speak to them for God. Moses said, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning." Then God set forth the rules they were to live by: property rights, social responsibilities, laws of justice and mercy, and Sabbath laws. He promised to send his angel before them into the land of Canaan and drive out the inhabitants before them, reminding them not to bow down and worship any of the foreign gods. God called Moses back up on the mountain, where he stayed for 40 days and nights. During that time, God laid out the plan for the tabernacle and the duties of the priests: altars, lampstands, priestly garments, the courtyard, all with purpose and significance, all laid out as a way for God's people to meet with him and offer him sacrifices for their sins. As a part of the design was an ark, a wooden chest covered in gold, overshadowed by 2 carved angels, or cherubim. This ark would be placed in the innermost room of the tabernacle, behind a thick veil. It was here, above the mercy seat, which is the top of the ark, and between the cherubim, that God could be found to meet with Moses. The priests must be consecrated, clean, and holy. God must be honored as the only true God, the Creator, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the God who brought them out of slavery and who promised to be their God and to lead them to a land flowing with milk and honey. Moses was meeting with this God on the mountain. But down below, when the people saw Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." And Aaron told them to bring all their gold jewelry, and he melted it down and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They held a festival, sacrificed burnt offerings to it, and partied. The Lord knew it and sent Moses down the mountain. God was going to destroy the people. But Moses interceded for them and reasoned with him that God's reputation would be destroyed in Egypt if the Egyptians saw what he had done to the Israelites. When Moses approached the camp, his anger burned, and he threw down and broke the 2 stone tablets of the 10 Commandments engraved by the hand of God. He confronted Aaron, whose response was, "I threw the gold into the fire, and out came this calf." Then the Lord struck the people with a plague because of what they had done with the calf. After that, he told them to leave that place and go up to the land flowing with milk and honey. An angel of the Lord would go before them to drive out the inhabitants, but that he would not go with them. Then they began to mourn, and Moses said to the Lord, "If your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here." And God replied, "I will do the very thing you ask, because I am pleased with you, and I know you by name." Then Moses said, "Now show me your glory." And God said, "I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. But you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. There is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen." Moses chiseled out 2 new stone tablets, and then God passed by Moses, proclaiming his name and his character. The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. Moses bowed down and worshipped. When Moses came down from the mountain, his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. And he had to put a veil over his face because the people were afraid to come near him. They laid out the tabernacle and consecrated the priests and put some manna and the 2 stone tablets in the ark. Then the cloud of God covered and filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted, they would set out for as long as the cloud did not lift, and they would encamp. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and a fire was in the cloud by night. This is the end of Exodus.